Mr. Spence, call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Call Dr. Wecht, please.
Dr. Wecht? Yes, sir. If you would, please. You, Dr. Wecht?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have you been sworn as a witness?
Yes, I have, Your
Fine.
Honor.
Thank you. If you would, please, come forward. Take your seat up here in the jury box.
Court, please.
You may proceed.
Doctor, tell them who you are.
Dr. Cyril Wecht, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm a pathologist specializing in anatomic, clinical, and forensic pathology.
Thank you. Would you tell the folks whether or not you were part of the President's, the House Committee's panel?
Yes, I was, Mr. Spence, one of the 9 forensic pathologists who had been convened by the Select Committee of Assassinations by the House of Representatives.
And you served with Dr. Petty, who the jury have already heard?
Yes.
Did you agree with the conclusions that Dr. Petty gave to the jury in this case?
No, not with what I would consider to be the principal, relevant, and important issues in this case.
All right. Now, Doctor, let's get with what the facts are in this case. Why is everybody concerned? Just explain as briefly as you can why everybody's concerned about whether there was one shot that went through both the President and Governor Connally, or 2 shots. I mean, what possible difference does it make? Explain.
The reason for the problem was this. They got the alleged murder weapon, this Mannlicher Carcano single-action non-automatic weapon, and it was determined that in the hands of the most skilled marksman that the government could find, it took 2.3 seconds from shot to shot. They then looked at the Zapruder film, and they saw when Kennedy was hit the first time, then when Connally was hit, and they determined that there was only a lapse of time somewhere between 1/2 to 1.5 seconds. So it was then humanly impossible. They had already made the commitment to themselves that it was a sole assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald. They then had to find a way to fit all that in. The way they found was the so-called single bullet theory, which we prefer to refer to as the magic bullet theory. That is the theory that holds that the same bullet that went through the President's back and out his neck re-entered Connally's back, went through his chest, broke his rib, exited from the front of his chest, re-entered the back of his wrist, caused a comminuted or shattered fraction of the distal end of the radius, the heavy dense bone that comes from the elbow to the wrist, exited from the front of the wrist, re-entered the left thigh, fell out of the left thigh, was not noticed by anybody until a few hours afterwards at Parkland Hospital when a maintenance man was trying to get to the men's room, found his way blocked by stretchers from the emergency room, moved the stretcher, and lo and behold, there was Commission Exhibit 399, the magic bullet. Without the single bullet theory, there has to be more than one person shooting. I'm not talking about who or what.
And without their believing in the single bullet theory, the time won't work out. Is that it?
That's it, exactly.
Let's take a look at what's on the board. Explain now what this exhibit shows, Doctor.
Yes. This exhibit shows from our left, the jury's, President Kennedy and his wife.
Stand down.
Certainly. May I use this, Your Honor?
Yes, please. Step
Yes,
right
sir.
over. Step on this side.
Don't use it on me.
Thank you.
Excuse me. The President and Mrs. Kennedy, Governor Connally, Mrs. Connally, these are jump seats in the rear compartment of the car. Greer and Kellerman, the Secret Service agents. This is a simple schematic illustration to demonstrate how a bullet would have been moving if it had been fired from the 6th floor window of the Texas School Book Depository building. It would have been coming from up downward. It would have been coming from right to left and from rear to front. The bullet entered the back of President Kennedy, and then it moved to the front, and it moved to the left, and it exited from the midline of his neck. That bullet did not strike any dense bone, There was nothing to deflect it whatsoever, nothing to alter its path. It was traveling at approximately 2,000 feet per second muzzle velocity. When it exited from the front of the president's throat, it would have continued in a straight line. There is simply no way possible for that bullet to have entered Governor Connolly's posterior right axillary area, which is a fancy medical way for saying behind the right armpit. If it hit him behind the right armpit, it would have had to have come out of the president's neck and in some way veered back to the right and then stopped and turned around and started once again in a path toward the left. Bullets do not react that way, not even in comic books.
Folks, show me Exhibit 67 again, please. What does it show you, Doctor?
This is Zapruder frame 230. The president has been hit. Both of his arms have come up, one toward his mouth, the other toward his throat. Governor Connolly seated directly in front of the president, as you can see. At this point, the president has been hit approximately 1 to 1.5 seconds already, sometime behind the so-called Stemmons Freeway sign. Please note that Governor Connolly is holding a large-sized white Texas Stetson type hat.
Now,
and notice
please,
his
let me stop a minute.
right hand.
That's this hat. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
He's holding it in his hand.
And he has it clutched between his fingers and his thumb.
He's already been hit, supposedly, according to Dr. Petty.
Under the single bullet theory, approximately a second to a second and a half has elapsed, and Governor Connolly, under the definition of the single bullet theory, has been hit through the chest, through the wrist, the bone has been shattered, the nerve that permits the thumb to hold things in apposition has been almost completely severed. The bullet's gone into the left thigh, and there he sits, continuing to hold the hat and to look forward. A remarkable accomplishment.
Thank you. Now let's take a look at Exhibit 278. Would you come over here, Doctor? We're not getting much exercise anyway here in this trial. What do we got here?
What this shows is a composite of several bullets. Bullets that were fired in an experiment conducted under the auspices and at the direction of the Warren Commission in 1964 at an Army base in Maryland near Washington, D.C. They fired 6.5 millimeter copper-jacketed lead-core military-type ammunition first into cotton wadding, striking nothing.
Same as this gun. Same ammunition as out of this.
Exact same ammunition and from the same kind of weapon. Not Oswald's weapon, but another Mannlicher Carcano. These two bullets were fired into cotton wadding, striking nothing. Notice the deformity at the base. This bullet went through a goat carcass, breaking one rib of a goat. Notice its widening. It even looks like a different bullet, but it's the same ammunition. That deformity is caused by the impact against one rib of a goat. And notice the extrusion of the lead core at the base. This bullet went through the wrist of a human cadaver, breaking the radius of a human cadaver, the same bone that was broken in Governor Connolly. In other words, they wanted to simulate, to reproduce the fractures that had occurred in the governor. So this one was to simulate the rib fracture, and this one was to simulate the wrist fracture. This bullet is not involved in this case. It's the same ammunition, not involved in this case.
Thank you.
And over here, a little off the screen, is Commission Exhibit 399, the so-called stretcher bullet, which, according to the government's theory, broke both the rib and the wrist in Governor Connolly, but emerged in near pristine condition, the only slight deformity at the base, otherwise the bullet completely intact. And yet here are the results of their experiment, and they chose the sample or representative bullets. I did not choose them.
I'm waiving my objection to all this, Your Honor.
I understand.
Obviously, totally and completely improper. He's given a summation to the jury, but I'm waiving the objection. Thank you, Your Honor. Let's
Well,
Cyril enjoy himself.